Zeophates, oxygen not included, tutorials, tips, and tricks. And welcome in, and today we're going to start on a new thing we're going to work on. We're going to work on stables, and we're going to start working on food production, because we have no crops. Our food is going to start decaying and going down, and we really need a food source. Now, what does that really mean for us? And how are we going to do it? And what are we going to do? Well, first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on stables. But there's a couple of requirements we need for stables. So let's take a look at them. First thing we're going to need is right at the top where food is you're going to need to get ranching, and you're going to need animal control. You're going to require this one. There's two stages to this type of build. You're going to require that, and the second thing you're going to require is you're going to need brute force refinement. Which you should already have. Now, one of the differences is this is going to be the first time you're going to require a skill. Everything else we've been doing till now has not required any skills to do, with the sole exception of digging. And that's just to clear stuff out. Don't give your dupes skills if you don't need to. Leave them for when you need them. So, what skill do we need? Well, the skill we actually need is improved farming and critter ranching. And we're also going to need another dupe, this time only needing one skill. They just need grilling. We'll get into why later. So, you've got the skills. Well, what are we going to do with them? Inevitably, by now, you've got a bunch of hatches. Or, well, a bunch of critters of all varieties, probably stomping around your base. We're now going to start using them. Okay, so what are we going to use them for? Yeah, let's just get this stuff taken care of. Well, we're going to make what's called a stable. The stable, for the absolute minimum stable, needs to be 12 tiles big. Maximum size of the stable is 96 tiles. I always aim for the max. It allows you to store the most mobs in the stable. So, what do we need for a stable? Well, under your food category, there's 3 buildings we need for a stable. Just 3. First thing we are going to need is we are going to need a critter drop-off. In that critter drop-off, I'm going to set it to hatch and hatchling. The hatchlings are the younger form of hatches, so you want them both set. I am personally going to set this to 5 critters. For hatches, they have a certain amount of space that's needed, otherwise they classify themselves as confined. Now, the unfortunate part is if there's 2 hatches in a space, the amount of space needed is doubled. So there is a diminishing return. We're going to copy that up there. Well, what's the next thing we need? The next thing we need in here is under stations, we need a grooming station. Well, it's not going to like it because it's outside of a stable, but it's not going to classify it as room until we actually have it closed off. So, next thing also we're going to need is we're going to need a critter feeder. And inside here, we're going to have to look through, and we're going to find our hatches. And this is all the stuff that we have that they can eat. I'm going to set it to meal lice. Now, one thing to note about what you feed your hatches is you'll probably want to come up to the entries. You're going to want to go to critters. You're going to want to look at hatches. What you feed your hatch will turn around and cause them to mutate. And they'll turn into various different things, like stone hatch. Sage hatches excrete coal as the waste, so there's a source of coal for you. But they only eat certain things. Dirt, slime, algae, fertilizer, polluted dirt, so here's a method you could use to get rid of it. Nutrient bars, mush bars, and right there, meal lice. They can eat all this stuff. What you feed your hatch will change what it is going to be able to eat. So we're going to copy that over. Now, one thing is, okay, well, it's 96 tiles. That was oddly done. But that's not the way I want these things set up. So I'm going to quickly destroy these. I could put a door at the end there and just operate like that. But I don't want to. And there's actually a reason for that. You see, this section here has already turned into that already turned into a stable because it met the minimum required size. Okay, so let's block these rooms off. Put our doors in. That's going to symbolize the room. And let things go. Well, if you're paying attention, here's 100 tiles big. Well, it needs to be a max of 96. I actually did this intentionally. The reason why I did this intentionally is, first of all, you can actually have these doors set to open, and it's not going to matter. But I did this intentionally because by taking a door, placing it there, and placing it there, these tiles that were covered are not classified as acting as part of the room. So if we go and look now this is classified as a stable. Why is this important? Because we're going to grab our hatches. We're going to go into our priorities here. And Abel, who is our rancher, is going to have ranching set as a higher priority. You see, the thing is, the hatch can't jump over here. So even though this is still classified as part of the stable, and it counts for the hatch's free area so it can move around, it can't get over here. Which means we can now turn around and use this section for other things. I personally say that what you should do is you should have two things in these areas before you do anything else. First things first is you want a container for whatever kind of food the hatches are going to eat. So we're going to set this to meal ice. We're going to set it to priority 8 because we want it to fill the feeders first. So any meal wood that's been generated is going to come here, and the hatches are not going to go past that door. So the next thing we're going to want a storage bin. This is for the first tier of this system. There's a second tier that I'll show you next episode. In the storage bin, we know these guys are going to excrete coal. So we're just going to turn on these guys storing coal. So these guys are going to poop out coal, and then it's just going to get stored here. It's just to keep this area from getting too cluttered. So what do we do with all this extra space? Is it just going to sit idle? No. You can literally put anything else in this space. At all. Anything. I personally like going through, and we'll get our... helps if I'm on the right tile. I personally love coming through and I mean, we need the meal wood. This is going to serve two purposes. One, it's going to create food for the hatches to eat. Two, it's going to create food for our dupes to eat. But our goal is not for them to eat mealwood. Our goal is for them to eat something far better. So, how else the rest of the system going to work? Well, first of all, let's just get some space finished, cleared out. We're going to start working on a kitchen area. So what do we need in the kitchen? Well, generally the first thing we're going to want is we're going to need a microwave musher. Why do we want that? Because generally your first food source that you're going to use is just going to be lice loaf. Simple, straight out right. That's what your dupes are going to eat for the first while. And you can make other stuff in here. But we don't actually want any of this. It's just one of the first buildings that I usually put in my kitchen. What we are going to want is we're going to want an electric grill. And if you have it, we're going to want a refrigerator. And then coming up to our rooms here, kitchen. Minimum tile of 12 tiles, max size is 96. I personally don't use spice grinders. I just don't use them. I've never felt the need to use them. But we're going to kick it in anyways. So to that end, we're going to now seal this off. We've got a kitchen. So we need to give this some power. You can use whatever power option you want. I'm just going to go with our old standby. Yes, this, I like I said, I generally do this a lot with this type of power system. One other thing we are going to want is we're going to want an egg cracker. We're going to want that sit there. We're going to leave this alone for right now. The reason why we want the stables is because, well, the hatches are groomed, and as the hatches go from wild to tamed, their egg laying or their reproduction is going to skyrocket. Let's see if we can actually find one that's in the process of. They will, of course, lay eggs even when they're still wild, but it's nowhere near as frequent. You'll get about 3 times as many eggs out of this otherwise. So right now we've got eggs being laid as this goes along, and we've got our egg cracker. I think you can do the math. Your math is wrong. There's an intermediary step that we need to do. In order to keep having hatches show up to be able to be populated into here, you need to have an incubator. 1 incubator per stable. That's usually a good way of going. You don't need to hook these into power. We want them set to priority 9. We want them set to hatch egg. And you're going to want to make sure continuous is checked. Tell them to incubate. Then copy that setting and put it over there. Over here, because we're working with hatches, we're going to tell you to crack hatch eggs forever, and your priority is going to be a 7. Why this method? The reason for this method is because the hatch egg, cannot talk today. He's going to grab it. It's going to come up here. It's going to set in the incubator. Now, if you want them to hatch faster, once per day, a dupe can come over and basically hug the egg, which will increase the grow rate. That, however, requires this to be powered. And considering these things take 240 watts, and they only need to be powered when that dupe is coming through and hugging them, you can either leave it unpowered, which works perfectly fine. That's usually the way I do it. Or you can start getting a little tricky with things. I personally don't like doing it, but I'll show you how to do it anyways. First thing we're going to want is we're going to want a power toggle. We're going to need a wire. Hooking it all in. And we're going to need an automation wire. And what we're going to set that to is we're going to set it to a cycle sensor. So right now, as it stands, that cycle sensor is going to control whether those things are powered or not. Right now, this is set so that it is active all the time. Well, I don't want that. I only want it to be active for, let's go 5% of the day. Then the activation time, we're going to set it to about here. So what that means is right now, they're not powered. As soon as it reaches that cycle time, this is now powered. Right. There's two ways you can deal with this, because I wasn't really paying attention. This actually disconnects power when it's turned on. So there's two ways you can deal with this. You can either use a NOT gate, which will reverse the signal, or we're going to set the activation duration to be 95%, and we're going to adjust the activation time so now it should allow power to flow if this has power, which it doesn't at the moment. It's going to let power flow for a little bit, which then is going to cut off power. Sure, make a liar out of me. Yeah, I was right the first time around. Some days I get myself confused on these things. Now this is active. You see Abe coming over and completely ignoring it, which is not something he should have done. There we go. You saw him starting to do it, but didn't have quite enough time. So I'm going to adjust that to there. Let's bump it up to 10%. You can finick this however you want. But basically what it is Abe's got... Why are you... That's because you're going to do that. He's not going to come here. He's going to hug the egg. That egg now has the status of lullabied. Lullabied is going to increase the incubation rate by 20%. Normally it's 5% per cycle. It's going to increase its incubation rate by 25%. Basically by 20%. And the time's going to stop. Power's going to disconnect. Ideally, you're going to want to have it so there's enough time for him to hug each egg. Now, what's going to happen is as soon as that hatches, it's going to go into here so long as there's enough room. So once this hits 5 critters each, it's going to stop. Then the critters just can eventually just get dumped over here. But the entire reason we're doing this is because we need the hatches. We need to guarantee we always have 2 eggs going. What's going to happen is we have 2 eggs. In fact, let's spawn in some critter eggs. Let's put 4 eggs. This is just going to be a demonstration of the system. So right now we've got 4 eggs. What the hell is suffocating? Right, because you went down there for some reason. Yeah, this is going to be something we're going to have to deal with soon. Yeah, carbon dioxide keeps dropping down, so if you keep digging down, you generally won't have to worry about it building up in your base. But you see here, that's gone through. So, let's see here. No errands available there. This is a work errand. You can select on the building and see what schedule it's setting for any particular option. So let's go take a look at our priorities here. Who had our skill? It was Quinn that had our... No, it was Rowan that had our grilling skill. So Rowan, we're going to come along here, and you're going to go do cooking skills first. I generally am not running research when I don't need to. See, right there. Right there, it's going to turn around and it's going to crack those eggs. But it first made sure these had their eggs, and they will not take the eggs from these. Then our final step for food is we're going to set a refrigerated raw egg. And in here, we're going to set them to making omelets forever. So anytime there's raw egg, it's going to turn around and it's going to make it into an omelet on this grill. Now those omelets give your dupes a morale of +4. And while you're in here, well, if you have any gristleberries kicking around, turn them into a +1 morale food. And the really good thing is the barbecue. So any meat that's laying around, let's turn that into food. So really, you should go turn around, set it to edible, and honestly, deconstruct your first food storage. No longer needed. I'm going to set this to a priority 9, and I'm actually going to shut off the meal lice. Simply because they're, well, being used over here as a food source. So this right here, you see them delivering the raw egg. And now he's coming over and he's cooking. And there you go. We're going to make sure we select omelets in here, just so that it'll get refrigerated, which slows down its degradation and rotting. But right there, now we've got, as long as these mealwoods continue growing, which we need dirt for, I will show you another way of doing that later. We will now have theoretically an infinite supply of food. If you find yourself I'm just getting rid of this. It's obviously causing some headaches. So as long as you've got food, you should have, realistically, an infinite amount of food. This section here, you only need the one of. But if you find yourself running out of food, build another stable. Increase the number of hatcheries. Build another stable. With the exact same setup, chuck another incubator in, and you'll increase your food supply. So that is Tier 1 automated food.